I'm Nancy and I blog at Do Small Things with Love. And since I do so many felt and embroidery projects, I thought I would do a few embroidery tutorials and videos so that you can actually see how to do it. The biggest question I get with my projects is how to do a perfect blanket stitch. And I don't claim to do a perfect blanket stitch, but I do it a lot. So I'll show you kind of how to do it. So first of all, the blanket stitch looks like this, if you can see it. It's a stitch that I use a lot of times on edging on projects, on the edge of, this is an ornament from a Jessie tree. And as you can see, it goes all the way around the outside. It offers a nice edging. I also do this a lot of times on little purses or pouches. I like to do it in a contrasting color, but you could also do it in a matching color and it would blend. But what's the point if you're doing all this work stitching? You might as well make it stand out. So what it is it whips around the outside. It's a stitch that has a line on the front, but also has a nice string on the outside around the edge too. That's why it's nice for edging. So I use it on the edge of these. These are two ornaments from a Jessie tree pattern that I have listed in my Etsy shop. I also used it, I use it in figures a lot too. I use it on the edge of this nativity set that I have listed in my Etsy shop. And as you can see, everything is glued, so it's pretty quick. But there's a blanket stitch edging here, and since it's in kind of a matching color, you can't really see it. And then also around the outside. And what's nice about it is that, especially working with felt, is that the two edges of your pieces of felt come together so there's no seam allowance needed. It basically just brings the two edges together like this without any seam allowance. It makes it easy for cutting patterns because you just cut the exact shape you want. You don't have to worry about a seam allowance. Okay, so let's do it. Here we go. I'm just gonna do a little example. I'm not working on a project right now. Okay, so what you're gonna need, I usually work with felt. You can do any fabric, but since it's not a very complete stitch, it's better to work with a fabric that's not going to fray, and felt is exactly that. It's usually the edging to a project, so usually I've done all the steps before this, and blanket stitch is the last step. So you're also going to need embroidery thread. You can use 2 or 3 threads, depending on what you feel, or if you're using a pattern. If you're doing something like a purse, probably more threads is smarter because it'll get some wear. So thread your needle. Use a needle with a point, not a cross stitch needle with a dull point. Oops. For this project, you're going to need to tie a knot. It's not the type of thing where you can just tuck it in because you're going to want to keep on pulling this tight. If you watched another video of mine, you've probably seen this trick before, but I like doing it, so we're going to do it again. So I have it on my thread with the tail. Take the end, point it back at your needle. You wrap it, grab it like this, wrap it around your thread 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Hold it with this hand, holding it tight, holding the wraps tight, and pull it down. And bingo, I have a knot. Good. Usually only need 1 knot when you're working with thread. So blanket stitch is usually with 2 different pieces and you're stitching them together. So once I have my knot in my thread, you're going to want to hide your knot. And so, okay, first thing to think about is am I stitching along the edge of something that's going to be showing? Do I want my blanket stitch showing? If you do, then you want the knot to be hidden between the 2 pieces of fabric. This is pretty much exclusively how I use the blanket stitch, as a stitch that's shown on the edge. So if you're doing one of my projects, this is what you want to do. So come up in the middle with it right between the 2. So you're going just through the top piece, sandwich them back together, and there my tail is hidden. You're going to go below, stitch up directly up through where you just came, as close as you can. Okay, stitch up, pull it tight. The first stitch is the trickiest because oftentimes it will slip, okay? So you have this is how I want it to be, but my thread is coming up from the top. You always kind of want your thread to be along the side, okay? So go back and you're going to stitch back through here, okay? And again, it's kind of, the first stitch never really wants to cooperate. Kind of pull it, place it exactly where you want to, and pinch it so it stays there. If you don't pinch it, oftentimes when you pull it, it's going to slip back down. And then it will be a kind of a diagonal stitch up this way, and you don't want it. You always want this stitch up along the top, along the edge, okay? So I'm pinching and I'm holding. And an idea for how far to go before you stitch back down is about the same length as this stitch. You kind of want it to be a square. This as equal to this, okay? And again, I don't usually do anything perfect, but we try. Okay, so I came up through the back again, pull up. Before this loop is all the way through, tuck your needle through there and pull. And again, hold that first stitch tight so that it doesn't slip down, okay? Do you see my 2 stitches? Again, up through the back, through the loop as it comes, and pull tight. I'll keep doing a few more because once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. It's really common sense. So again, pull tight, okay? Up through the back. And once you kind of get going, you don't have to pull it, you don't have to hold them anymore. It's naturally going to do what you want to do. Through the back, through the loop, through the back, through the loop, through the back, through the loop, through the back, through the loop. Okay, and let's say, oops, I'm going to lose my tail. Let's say that's all I wanted to do. So you can kind of see, and I have my edge there, and I wanted to end. The way to end with this and try to make it look neat is that you're just going to kind of stitch on top of yourself for a while. And trying to line up your stitches so maybe it just looks like one. Again, blanket stitch, especially if you're doing it with a contrasting thread, it's never going to be perfect, at least not if you're me. So anyways, so come back up. Look, I'm coming right back up where I had previously stitched, so I'm going to be right on top of it. Come back up, do it just as you've been doing, stitch back through that loop, if I can get it. Okay, and pull this one super tight. So you can see I'm kind of on top of myself. If I'm working on something like an ornament that I know my kids are going to be yanking on and pulling, I'll maybe do that a couple of times. But maybe your kids aren't as rough as mine are. And so I pulled up through a couple times. Again, I want to hide this tail. So what I usually do, I go back and I kind of stitch through what I have here. Okay, do you see my needle's kind of tucked underneath that thread on my edge? I kind of sew through there a little bit. And then if I can, if it's not something that's totally shut, I'll actually pull my needle out the back here, pull it through, and then trim my tail there. So and you can see on this edge, there's no tails showing now. So it's hidden. If you're doing something like a circle, like I did with these ornaments, and it was actually glued in the center, I couldn't do that. I just had to stitch through the edge, pull my tail, and trim it as close as I could on the edge, so I didn't have that little tail showing. But that is basically the blanket stitch, and you can do a ton with it. And I think it looks kind of decorative and pretty. So, and again, if you're looking for a project to do with a blanket stitch, I have tons of tutorials on my blog, little felt projects, and a couple patterns listed in my Etsy shop. And I'll leave those links at the end of the video. Thank you.